Guys, I think I just hit a button as I was moving the phone around because I don't have my tripod. Let me try to do something. Let me just do it this way, pop it up in my bag. Anyway, so if you're picking this up, it's part 2 now of at least what'll be a 3-parter. So I had an interesting opportunity about an hour before my live stream yesterday to observe something that people are passionate about. I talked about being able to have civil discussions and people being passionate about things. I'm trying to get this thing set up here. Okay, there we go. So at least I can talk now. Anyway, this couple came in. Remember, I was in a military, a facility and hall that celebrates military veterans. And on the TV was a preseason football game. And a gentleman came in with his wife and was talking about how he really wishes that they would pass a rule or a law that says everybody has to stand for the anthem, because he really wants to watch football this year. But his protest last year, the only thing he could think to show his disdain for what he's very passionate about is players kneeling, was to protest by not watching games, and he missed it. So when he kind of stated that he wishes they would pass some rule that says these guys have to stand, he can then get back to watching football, because he finds it highly, highly, highly offensive that any American would kneel during the national anthem and disrespect our flag. That was his take on it, certainly. And as I said, people are very, very passionate about things. From the other side of the bar was a gentleman that was engaging in a conversation. And his take on it was basically, in what other capacity is kneeling disrespectful? To the soldiers that have been lost in war, you kneel at their gravesite. And he went on to share a story that I've heard before, and I'm trying to be fair and give both sides of the equation for you guys to maybe have your own perspectives. He shared a story I'd heard before, that the way this whole thing started was that Colin Kaepernick is the football player that basically started this movement. And Colin Kaepernick used to sit for the national anthem originally. He didn't kneel. And the story went, and he met with a Green Beret, a military person, and said, how do I make my point known that I want to deal with social injustice without being disrespectful? And it was at the advice of this Green Beret that said, well, why don't you take a knee and kneel? Kneeling by its very nature is respectful. So I know that story's been reported, and it might even be fact. I don't know. I'm not saying it is or it isn't. But what was so interesting in what I observed was that the gentleman was so passionate about his belief that it's wrong and disrespectful, that the conversation started as a conversation, but it really didn't become a conversation. It wasn't a two-way street. And then when the other gentleman started to talk about, he made a statement which I don't agree with, but I've heard that statement as well, that you're more likely to be, he didn't even get the statement out, quite frankly, so maybe it's unfair for me to say that, but he started to make a statement that you're more likely to be killed by a police officer than by, and he didn't get it out. And the reason he didn't get it out is because that same gentleman that was so passionate about the kneeling, well, he had a wife with him that served in law enforcement for 16 years. And she took offense to that. And again, people are quoting things they've read and stated. I don't believe by any stretch of the imagination that you're more likely to be killed by a police officer than whatever the rest of the sentence is. But certainly there is a perception out there in our country that that's gaining momentum, and because I've heard that more than a half a dozen times. So whatever statistics are backing that up, and whoever is putting that forward, people are hearing that. Well, again, people are very passionate about our country and about our flag and about honor and integrity and respect, and these folks literally almost had to leave because they were so upset and riled up by it because they didn't see it that way one bit. And again, there are a lot of people, including myself, that see it that way to a large degree. So again, you had a topic that was very polarizing. What I did find interesting was the dynamic and how the discussion or conversation took place. Of course, someone asked me, and I put in my 2 cents. And my 2 cents, to those of you that don't know, there are people, and there was another gentleman in the bar that simply said, "Hey, I'm a soldier and retired, and we fought to give that guy his right to take that knee." So there's all different perspectives on it, right? And my point has always been, as it's raining on me right now, good God, man. My point has always been, not Kaepernick, to those of you that don't know, that are new to me, not Kaepernick per se, but there are literally dozens, if not hundreds, of other players that are following in his footsteps and kneeling. My concern is, I don't think they're doing any good by kneeling, because I don't think that anybody really knows what they're kneeling for. If you say social injustice, it's a very broad spectrum, and injustice fits any mold. As I've said, we could be talking about the Walmart employee down the road that doesn't have health insurance and benefits and feels that they're being taken advantage of. There could be certainly racial injustice. There could be the Me Too movement. There's injustice in every capacity, and injustice to some degree is a matter of perspective. If I feel I'm being done unjustly, whether I am or not, that's the reality. So I think what happens is when these athletes take a knee in a stadium, and they're in a stadium of 50,000 people, and they don't really have a clear statement as to what they're kneeling for, is where I think we get lost. I think the people that passionately are offended by it, it just puts gas in their fire. See, look, these guys, look how disrespectful. To the people that just want to do what I'm trying not to do and sit there and scream that there's a fire going on in the country, it puts fuel in their fire. They can stand on the outside and look at it and go, look, they're absolutely right. There's injustice and it's bullshit, and we need to take a knee and we need to unite to fight this injustice. But taking a knee in and of itself doesn't fight injustice, and that's my beef. Taking a knee simply would be like the fire alarm going off. You hear the fire engine going down the road, woo, woo, woo. So you know there's a fire somewhere, but you don't know where, you don't know what it is, and you don't know how to help. And I think that's what the guys taking a knee does for me. That's my opinion and my opinion only. And I don't want to get into some Facebook debate about it. I'm just sharing you how I think about it. But what was interesting to me was how when people are passionate about something, sometimes the civil conversation wasn't allowed to be civil last night. And had we all pointed the thumb at ourselves and just heard what the other person said, maybe we would have had a little bit of a different perspective. So there was that observation last night. And again, I'm pretty passionate about the idea too, so I'm not passing judgment in any way on anybody for what they think and how they feel and how they react to that. It's a very, very, if I gave 20 years to my country and found somebody kneeling, I don't know that I'd be able to have the perspective that I fought and gave 20 years, so they have that right. I know people have that perspective, and I don't know that I would. Secondly, I did this hour-long, I think it ended up being like an hour, this live stream last night that was very, I think it was met very well by people. I think at one point we had 15 or 16 or 18 people on there. And we're asking questions. Some I was able to answer. Some I went off on a tangent about a little bit of things. But what I felt was interesting was when I got back in from the live stream, there was a couple sitting there, and Chris was closing up, and I was sharing my perspective on helping charity and why I'm frustrated that we haven't been able to just come together as my little point the thumb family, and then have my family step up and do what they had to do. And I shared that, and I kind of called it on my video last night what I consider to be the kind of the $25 scam, maybe. People are afraid, and in my mind I thought the only thing I could think is that they're afraid to get scammed for $25 and look like a knucklehead. Well, because of this gentleman having a civil conversation with me, I got another perspective of that last night. So when I shared with him what I was thinking, he came back and shared something I'm going to share with you guys, because I think that's what this is about, because you have every right to feel as he did. So I don't know where I am right now, but like 3 or 4 cars have turned around in this little church parking lot to do U-turns here, and I guess they're all lost. And it's kind of interesting that in the last half hour 3 cars have turned around here to kind of get their bearings about them and directions. Anyway, but his perspective was this. He said, Jim, I've served 24 years in the military, and again, I'm not saying I agree 100% with this, but I see his point, and I want to share it with you guys in case this is who you are. He said, I served 24 years in the military, and every year we do this big, military drive to get families to donate, to help ourselves, to help other military people. But you could take military out of this and insert muscular dystrophy, cancer, breast cancer, heart disease, whatever. You can submit anything you want into this category. And he said, my problem, Jim, is when you give to something for 24 years and the problem is never solved, kind of ask yourself, what am I giving to? If I can't see it, if I can't touch it, what am I giving to? And I thought that was a valid perspective. I know Chris Rock does a bit about muscular dystrophy and says, hey, Jerry Lewis, you've been doing this telethon for 40 years and we haven't made any headway. Can't you bring out a little kid and tell me you've done something good and show me? And that was kind of this gentleman's point. That if, his basic point was like, look, let's say that guy over there is broken, then let's fix him. And if we can fix him, then he might be able to be an ally in fixing the next guy. When we put money into these giant umbrella charities and we don't see anything, that's defeating a little bit. And it had me remembering a conversation I had with Pastor Fred back in Columbia City, Indiana, when I was myself getting a little bit discouraged because I didn't feel like I was making enough change, or that I feel like I have such an unbelievable valid message and desire to help and to make this world a little bit better place. And when I don't see it, I kind of want to grab someone by the shoulders and shake them and say, what are you missing there? What don't you get? And Pastor Fred, in his words of wisdom and his calm manner, said, Jim, he said, what you don't realize right now is you're planting seeds. What you're doing is unbelievable and great. You're not going to see it. There's going to be seeds planted that are going to grow and blossom. And 3 years from now, and 5 years from now, and 20 years from now, what you're doing, the message you're spreading is going to spread. So for my benefit, what this gentleman said did give me perspective. I wish it wasn't that way for him. It's not that way for me, but I certainly can understand that, people may give to, you take a middle-class person like myself that gives to, let's say, 5 charities, but if those charities are always in need, you kind of get, like he said, if I had no bills and no mortgage and everything else, I'd be happy to give to a lot of different things, but I'm just trying to survive as well, and then I'm giving to these things year after year after year, and I'm not seeing the fire put out, and that was discouraging to him, and I thought that was a very valid point. So this is the second of my 3 videos today, because the next one's going to be really important for me. I love you guys for following. Please keep following. The first one I kind of hit a button and I think it's still there. So anyway, I love you guys. I'm going to come right back again.